The last thing, or I shouldn't say like the last thing or anything like that because I'm gonna have to cut this later. But I did want to bring up the Colorado forest fires that have been happening, every year since the dawn of time, I'm sure. And some people will say that it's just like the natural course of nature, that we're going to have wildfires every year and that to care about them is alarmist. But I did want to talk about this article which describes the severity of the wildfire situation in a way that I think people can actually understand. So this is from CSU, and it's titled "Colorado Wildfires Have Become Larger, More Predictable." So yeah, about these forest fires, and I just learned that the town like 10 miles away from me is being evacuated because of the forest fires. Because there's a huge one in between Colorado Springs and here, JoJo Bizarre Adventures Canyon City, and it is shut down because of a fire. The fire along this highway, and it apparently must be spreading south because Penrose is being evacuated, which is the town in between here and Pueblo, Colorado, to the east. So it's like a quarter of the way between here and Pueblo. There's no like state directive or mail or like text notification or anything like that telling us what's going on with these fires. It's just silence until you're told to evacuate. I really hope the $5,000 worth of home renovations I did in the last 2 months aren't burned to a crisp because of poor state planning. So look at this article again. In the past 30 years, wildfires in Colorado have increased in both frequency and size, especially in the past decade, according to a recent report from Colorado State University's Regional Economic Development Institute. It's not as easy as a narrative as just saying that every year it's getting worse. The report's author and a CSU environmental economics PhD candidate, Thomas Gifford, said, "It's really the predictability that is getting worse because there's more variance in the weather cycles." So right now, this week, we're going through like a historic early March heat wave of like mid 80 degrees in Colorado. So especially like right here, it's mid 80 degrees all week, but I assume it's like that in the rest of Colorado. This shit blew my mind. So a small number of fires account for the vast majority of burned acreage. Since 1990, the top 1% of the state's wildfires by size have accounted for nearly 50% of the total burned acreage. Of the 10 largest fires in state history, 8 occurred since 2012, with 3 occurring in 2020 alone. Some counties, including Larimer and Grand, have seen more than 15% of their total land area burned, he added. This is often due to exceptionally large fires. But there's a couple of interesting pieces of information here that I wanted to go over. Back in the 90s, Colorado had an average of a dozen fires a year, and on average, those fires were 1,000 acres, with the biggest one being 16,500 acres. But in the 2020s, the average number of total fires per year has increased to 72, about a 6-fold increase. So he talks about here how the fire in Larimer County caused like ecological devastation. So, and he also talks about how, fires can be good, but we'll get into that in a second. But then you have something like the Cameron Peak Fire, which again burned 20% of Larimer County and led to a whole slew of consequences afterwards. To this day, the area is still struggling to recover. You can drive up there right now and see a lot of burned trees. And after that fire, there were a bunch of flash floods in the area because of the lack of erosion prevention that those trees previously provided. And after the flash floods, all the fish died along a significant portion of the Padre River. So if you're an angler and you want to go fly fishing, you're not going to go to Larimer County anymore. So it just killed like a bunch of fish in the river, and you can't even fish there anymore. It's insane. So here's another interesting part. Wildfires in and of themselves aren't bad. They're a necessary part of the ecological systems. It's about making sure that they happen at a scale that is healthy for that given ecosystem. That's the challenge. And for the last 100 years, we've basically stopped the forests from burning altogether. Whenever one of those fire watchers saw a little plume of smoke after a lightning storm, or someone left a campfire burning, the rule was basically, we need to get this out by tomorrow. Only in the last 20 years have we begun to reconsider our policies in dealing with wildfires. In terms of future wildfire mitigation strategies, they've actually found controlled burns to be an effective way of containing the spread of those giant wildfires. Wildfires play an important role on a number of levels, especially by clearing out the fuel that's on the forest floor. So over the past 100 years, we've had more and more accumulation of fuels on those forest floors without ever allowing them to burn properly. Now, when they do catch on fire, it's way worse than it would have been otherwise. It's a hotter burn, it's a larger burn, it's a more destructive burn, and that actually leads to the ecosystem not being able to recover afterwards. Controlled burns are definitely part of the question, but there's a tricky issue with controlled burns where there's regulations in place that make it hard to do in some areas. The air pollution created by controlled burns could lead in conflict with air quality regulations. Trying to align those incentives and figure out what are the costs and benefits of releasing this carbon into the atmosphere versus avoiding the long-term risk of potentially catastrophic wildfire, that's really hard to do. So we're seeing like the consequence of poor planning happen over this period of time, and it's all policy stuff. I mean, there's one more bit that talks about how much money we spend on it. We're facing $1 billion state deficit. We spend tens of millions of dollars a year on wildfire suppression and mitigation. And there was a recent study that found that there's a misalignment of investments where wildfire is concerned. Mitigation is really expensive, but the amount it saves you in the back end is huge. But because of that huge upfront cost, we typically don't invest in it as much as we need to. It's a lot more politically palatable to send planes in to take care of that fire that you can see than prevent the one you can't, even if that's frequently more expensive. As things continue to get warmer, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's because they don't want to do the more expensive thing up front and actually invest in clearing the debris to some extent. So it talks about how there are machines that can do it, and that's super expensive because you have to get a machine through the forest. And then it talks about how the controlled burns are cheaper, but the air regulations, which we do need to be concerned about. But there's a lot of places we could cut emissions otherwise in Colorado. We don't regulate the emissions of cars in Colorado like California does. So I mean, I'm sure if we did something to regulate companies or like cars or something like that, then we would have a little bit more air to spare for not burning to death and not losing all of our homes and being evacuated because people don't want to do the thing that, like always, it's anti-intellectualism, and it's being against the experts telling you that it's worth investing in to do something that's going to kill us all, whether it's fires or vaccines or fucking, I don't know. Let's hope I don't get evacuated, and that's all.